evidence anywhere else of Jesus Christ that wasn't written by one of his followers?
In 64, Tacitus, a Roman historian, wrote about Jesus. He was not a believer. Josephus, the Jewish historian, writes pretty clearly about Jesus dying and rising from the dead. Not that he believed it, but he writes it as this happened, supposedly, the resurrection.
Did he write it happened, or did he write people believed it happened?
Oh, he wrote that there are a bunch of people who believe it happened. No, he was not an eyewitness. He points out that, yes, the resurrection is believed by many. The enemies of Christ wrote about him. There are negative references to Christ. Christ was a sorcerer, and I find that to be fascinating. That the enemies of Christ viewed him as a sorcerer, which means he supposedly performed miracles.
Oh, Cliffy. Oh, how Cliffy you lie. Oh, and Cliff is not lying in such a way that it is just an outright lie. He is lying in such a way as he is misleading. The reason why I say that he is misleading is that first he claims that Tacitus wrote about Jesus as as listening to what other people said or what people believe, but recognize he said Tacitus in 64. Now, 2 seconds of research will show you that Tacitus was born in 56. So if Tacitus was born in 56, then that means that in 64, he was 8 years old. So what you are claiming is that Tacitus at 8 years old was already a notable historian. Let that sink in for a second. Let that sink. Maybe Cliff misspoke. I mean, he could not have meant 164 because Tacitus was dead by then, but Tacitus actually wrote about Jesus in and around 120. And he didn't necessarily write about Jesus. He wrote about Christians. These were people who believed in this Jesus character, believed in this resurrection. And Tacitus was asking Pliny, what should he do about them, since Tacitus was a governor at that time frame. So he wasn't necessarily saying that those people's beliefs are valid. This is just what people believe. I mean, for that to be something valid, then you would also have to say, since Tacitus wrote about Vespasian performing miracles in Egypt under the power of Serapis, then that Serapis must exist, since Tacitus wrote about people's belief in Serapis. He also wrote about people's belief in what would become Odin. He talked about the Germanic god Woden. So does that validate that those gods exist as well? It does not. It does not. See, Christians have a tendency to gravitate towards things that would support their belief system, whether they are real or fake, true or false. That's just a normal process of the Christian mind. It's a normal process of anybody's mind, actually. People have a general tendency to gravitate towards what fits their narrative. It is only a critically thinking person who does not have a landing point that will say, okay, wherever the information leads me is where I will go. And so even though Cliff should be educated enough to know that the writings of Josephus are an interpolation, meaning that Josephus wrote about different Yahshuas who were claiming to be the Messiah and underwent different punishments or situations during the time frame of Pontius Pilate. Josephus, not even being born till 34, did not even begin these writings until after 70 CE, once the temple had been destroyed and Vespasian had become emperor of Rome, and Titus then becoming his the next emperor of Rome, and Josephus being a scribe of Titus. This is what they gravitate towards, the interpolation, meaning that somebody added then there was a man, if you could call him a man, who performed many miracles and died and resurrected, died under Pontius Pilate and was resurrected. That's an interpolation, meaning that someone added that to Josephus's writing in and around the 4th, 5th century CE in order to validate a historicity of the Jesus character. You see, they like to gravitate towards manuscripts of people who were not eyewitnesses, who are getting this 3rd, 4th, 5th hand, and none of them actually can verify that any of these things happen. So when they do this, this is very disingenuous as to claim that this is factual, actual historical data, by which it just simply is not. So Cliff, stop lying to these college kids. Why don't you, well, you know what, every time you do go talk to an adult, you end up getting smashed. So keep doing what you're doing. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.